Okay, beautiful people, here is my model think aloud about just-in-time scaffolds. My students, when I teach them this, will not have been in school thinking about China for about 5 months. And so how am I going to meet them where they are and keep them doing grade level work? Okay, so in order to figure this out, I first consulted the Learning and Acceleration Guide, and it highlights this idea that for students to adequately appreciate later units on China, it's important that they understand developments in the Song and Tang dynasty as well as the key ideas of Confucianism. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I probably need to stamp Confucianism a little bit better than the lesson does already, because it's just not in there very much and it's an important foundational aspect. Now, luckily, there's a lesson in the unit plan that reviews Confucianism and other major belief systems, but I can also make changes to the lesson itself to emphasize this idea. So what I did was I took the Do Now, which had the Song Dynasty in it, and I wrote a comment to myself to change it to filial piety and the five relationships to cut the Song Dynasty, right? There's no reason that the Song Dynasty needs to be in that matching. It's going to come up later in the lesson, but filial piety and the five relationships might be a cool way to review Confucianism. Okay, here's another one. In the lesson plan, it highlights this important key concept about Buddhism and its core beliefs, and it says that I should mention Mahayana Buddhism, which is a branch of Buddhism that went to China. So again, I'm going to make changes to my do now. Instead of just saying Buddhism, as the original one did, I'm going to change that to Mahayana Buddhism. And instead of saying a religion that was founded by Siddhartha, I'm going to change that definition to more accurately reflect the standards that I want to teach, okay, and I want to scaffold to. I want to note that there's this important lesson here in the unit where you review belief systems. So I'm going to make it a point to distinguish Mahayana Buddhism from original Theravada Buddhism during this lesson. And I'm going to harp on Confucianism during that lesson because the next day it's going to come up and be central for my students' understanding of Song Dynasty China. Okay. Finally, I looked through the rest of the lesson and I found this question in the textbook tour that I thought might be more difficult for my students than it normally would be. It says, looking at the map on page 320, what might explain the shape of the Tang Dynasty? So what's going on here? And the answer is that they're trying to access the Silk Road. So I tried to make sure that the lesson has a Silk Road reference early on. And sure enough, in the Do Now, it references the Silk Road. So hopefully that'll set my students up to remember the relevance of the Silk Road to China. Okay, and that is how I just in time scaffold. Looking forward to seeing you doing it later on with our lesson about East and West Africa.